Thank you. And welcome to the January 5th, 2021 Select Board meeting. Just to remind people, on March 12th, 2020, Governor Baker issued an executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law to enable public bodies to carry out their responsibilities while adhering to public health recommendations regarding social distancing. This executive order released public bodies from the requirement in the open meeting law that meetings be conducted in a public space that is open and physically accessible to the public, provided that we provide alternative means of public access to the deliberations, and in this case, the Zoom platform. And also there's information regarding following the meeting on television on the meeting agenda as well. So to begin the meeting, I would like to let everyone know who's with us in the meeting. And my name is Melinda Collins, and other board members are Katie Conlon, Arthur Doyle, Richard Wells, Michael Zulis. Our town administrator, Michael Dennehy, is with us, as is our director of health, Caroline Kinsella, and our executive administrative assistant, Hillary Waite. So she's always here and intrepidly helping us make sure that the meetings run smoothly from a technical perspective, as is our MATV host. If everyone would please join the board in saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United
States of America
and to the republic
for
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Our first agenda item is our COVID-19 update, and I will turn it over to Mr. Dennehy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to introduce our hardest working health director, Caroline Kinsella. She has a couple of announcements. I don't want to steal any of her thunder, but as many of you are aware, Milton is in the red for the second consecutive weeks. There are some stipulations that come along with that. The main reason for that is our high positivity rate. The algorithm that the state has set, any community of our size with a positivity rate of greater than 5% does characterize as a community of high risk. And Milton is one of 190 communities in Massachusetts that are high risk at this current time. But there is some work in progress again. We are continuing to spread the message through social media and through our town's website. I will mention that this board unanimously supported an additional $150,000 of CARES Act money, coronavirus relief fund money, dedicated to the town, and has opened up 2 more testing days. So this coming Sunday, January 10th, and the following Sunday, January 17th, at the Milton DPW yard. Again, it's going to be 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., coordinated by Milton Police and DPW folks, and tests being administered by Fallon Ambulance. We'll have 2 more free COVID testing days. So we do welcome that. Caroline has insisted and continues to stress that the virus is in our community and we need to do everything to help stop the spread. So Caroline, I hope I didn't take up too much of your time, but just a quick synopsis of where we stand as of last Thursday's report.
You're still muted, Caroline.
Here we go. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for that update. Good evening, Madam Chair and Select Board members. I just wanted to give a short update about what's going on in the community in regards to the vaccine distribution and our numbers right now in Milton. So the Milton COVID-19 cases have dramatically increased in the past month and a half after the Christmas and New Year's holiday. As of today, Milton has a total of 1,342 residents who have tested positive for COVID-19 and 116 probable cases since the start of the pandemic. Over the last 3 days, as I said, the numbers have been increasing. Today we had 40 cases, yesterday 15 and 22 the day before. In the last 14 days, we've had 231 cases and percent positivity is 5.21%, which indicates, as you said, Michael, that we're now in the red zone for the second week and possibly this week, I'd say too. So I'm seeing a lot of positive cases across the board in all ages and in family members. As you know, Governor Baker announced a 2-week temporary executive order and revised COVID-19 measures that are in effect from Saturday, December 26th till Sunday, January 10th, which is reducing the capacity levels in many sectors from 40 to 25% around all the businesses, restaurants. So we're seeing that decrease to 25%. The Massachusetts Department of Public Health has asked the local public health department to distribute the Moderna vaccine to first responders only, which includes police, fire, and EMS. So the vaccine is being rolled out now regionally within the state, and we're collaborating with Norfolk County 8, which is 8 surrounding health departments. The vaccine shipped to the Norwood Health Department today, so that's great news. And the first 800 doses that they received is going to be split up among 8 health departments. So tomorrow we're going to have a conference call to work out logistics of how it's going to be distributed. This week we also had our first webinar on PrepMod, it's called. It's an electronic platform which will schedule and record our vaccine doses. So I'm still waiting for more information about how to register for this platform, but our hope is that we can schedule Moderna vaccinations privately by appointment only next week on Tuesday and Wednesday. So that's my hope. We're going to slowly start rolling it out over a number of hours on Tuesday and Wednesday. So the Moderna vaccination administration will prove to be challenging as the vaccine is time sensitive and temperature sensitive. I'll also have to plan to administer 10 vaccines. When I open up the vial, I have to administer the whole vial. I can't just put it back into the refrigerator, and it's only good for 6 hours. So there's a lot of recommendations around the vaccine. There's also a 15 to 30-minute post-observation period after the injection to observe for any anaphylactic side effects. So this is going to slow down our process as we have to monitor after we give the injection, everybody who receives the injection for 15 to 30 minutes, just to make sure that they're okay. So in addition, we're going to be giving 2 doses. It's going to be first dose next week and then 28 days later. So this is a process. But the health department is continuing to message the community about plans for vaccine distribution. I'm currently setting up a dedicated phone line, and I'm posting a weekly health director message on the health department webpage, which I started today, to keep residents informed. And I'm going to be working with Mike Lynch, MATV, to get out that message. So we're really starting small. We only have 800 doses that was delivered today to Norwood. And so it's going to be a process, but we're up for the challenge. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, Mr. Dennehy? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that, Madam Chair. If I could just add a couple other things. So the library has reverted back to its curbside service program, which was very successful in the spring, due to 2 consecutive weeks in the red. And because of that, Caroline and I participated in a remote meeting yesterday with the state's COVID enforcement and intervention team. Basically, it's an initiative that the Baker-Polito administration has set up to provide resources to our community, both from town government perspective and also our businesses, around some best practices with communities that are high risk. Some successful campaigns have been run in some of your larger cities like Lowell and Lawrence and Revere, where the outbreak was much larger sooner. So tomorrow at 2 o'clock, we'll follow up with a more localized call with them to see what resources they have for us. Some of it involves public safety and what those officials can do. Other is social media messaging, and just basically there's a best practices approach to how to deal with stopping the spread. So we appreciate that, and we'll be in full attendance. But I just want to thank Caroline for all her efforts. She's been communicating with all of our department heads. If she's not on the phone with Will Adamczyk, she's speaking to Christine Stanton over at the Council on Aging, and just trying to work our way through this. And like I've said before, every day is a new normal, and now she's got the vaccination process for our first responders on her plate. But hopefully we're all heading in the right direction, and we'll be in a better place as soon as we can get some of this stuff rolled out. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and I have to say you got another big shout out today from our planning director. So we really appreciate all the work that you and your department are doing, and we're just so grateful that you've been here for our residents and for all of our staff. Do any members have? Oh, I can see Mr. Wells and Ms. Conlon. You already would like to. Mr. Wells, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you again, Caroline. Just a quick question. I think I probably already know the answer. On the 800 doses, that's just the first dose, right? So that's enough. 800 first doses. That's what I thought. Okay.
So we'll receive 100 doses, I'm hoping.
You got 100, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's a month, right? 4 weeks, something like 4 weeks in between. Okay. Thanks. Hey, that's a step in the right direction. That's
right.
And I just want to follow up to my colleagues, and I'm sure you've gotten some, Caroline, Mr. Denny has. We get a lot of emails from residents about, why do we close the parks? Why are the schools where they're at? It was not too many months ago, Caroline, when you came to us with 2 cases, and it was almost immediately after that we completely almost shut down our entire community. And now we're at a level where the higher than we've ever seen. So let's hope that I noticed that the new signs, the new ads are wear a mask, social distance, and get a test. And obviously by the number of tests we're giving out here, that's an important thing. I took 3 calls just on Sunday alone of residents who were panicked because they wanted to get tested and we weren't testing, and where could they go? So it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you already know that. So keep your chin up. I told you you'll have a vacation one day, just not today.
Thanks, Richard.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of course, Ms. Conlon.
Caroline, I have a quick question. I received an inquiry today from a son of an elderly couple in town who was asking when the elderly might be able to get the vaccine in Milton now that they've been prioritized. Do you have any information on that, or is it a little too soon to know what the time frame there might be?
I know, I wish I had the answer for you, Katie. I don't know.
Okay.
It depends on how quickly this vaccine is going to be distributed.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll keep on messaging on our website. As soon as I know, I'll put it up there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would think too, if it has to do with our elders, then maybe the COA would want to also coordinate messaging to help out with that maybe. Or
I'll talk with Christine.
Yeah, I know you're talking to everyone. So thank you. Does anyone else have a question or a comment they'd like to make? No. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you again after a long day for being here with us.
Thank you. Happy New Year. Thank you.
New Year. Great. And Mike Dennehy, I don't know if you mentioned the time, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. for the testing. That's still the time, yes?
Yes, I may not. That may have slipped my mind. I was moving pretty fast through it. Yeah, so it's this Sunday, January 10th, next Sunday, January 17th, 629 Randolph Avenue, our DPW yard, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's free. You don't need any symptoms. You don't need to be a Milton resident. It's open to all.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. So our next agenda item is the proposed 40B project at 652 Canton Avenue, a discussion and comment on the project eligibility letter application. The first portion of this will be public comment on this. However, before we begin, I have myself a rather lengthy comment and background because I realized from some of the emails we've been getting, which I think the board is always appreciative of that. Some people are a little new to the process, and I just want to be fair and make sure that people are coming in with the same information as those who've been following this a little more closely for longer. So just to outline the process, the town does not own the parcel, and so therefore the town is not the project proponent. That was one thing that I picked up on a few emails, and I tried to get back to people, but I couldn't get back to everyone today, but I will work through those. Chapter 40B is a state law that allows developers to file for a comprehensive permit that basically circumvents local zoning in order to create multifamily affordable housing, which is a priority that the state has identified is needed. And the first step is for a developer to apply for a site or what we call a project eligibility with a state subsidizing agency, such as Mass Housing or Mass Housing Partnership. And this has to be done whether the applicant is applying for a subsidy from the state or not. So at this point, it's the select board's role to represent the town's interests in this phase, the project eligibility letter phase. So if Mass Housing grants the project eligibility to the applicant, then the developer can apply for a comprehensive permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And the Zoning Board of Appeals has sole authority over this portion of the process. The select board's role during that 40B hearing at the Board of Appeals is to make sure that staff are supported and have the necessary resources to give the strongest and most compelling testimony possible to address shortcomings of projects and point out good features that need to be retained, and make sure that whatever wasn't addressed through the project eligibility process is also brought to bear in that testimony. And I think, as people know by now, part of this board's process is to also collect comments from residents. Not all towns and cities do that, but we do feel that it's important and it informs our response, and therefore also our testimony later on. Also, I'd like to let people know that to that end, in addition to having our planning director, Tim Zerwinski's coordination and his excellent guidance, the town also continues to work with our 40B consultant, Judy Barrett, and our special counsel, Johanna Schneider. So they've been with us for several months now, and we continue to work with them. In our last meeting, the board acknowledged that the applicant has connected this project, 652 Canton Avenue, this application with an application that is now before the Zoning Board of Appeals for 648 Canton Avenue. They're adjacent parcels, and they have connected them in the PL application for 652. Therefore, this would be addressed in our response, along with all the other pertinent factors such as traffic and environmental resources and integration with the existing development patterns. So other boards and staff will also be submitting comments for our inclusion in the response letter, which is due no later than February 25th. We did receive a 30-day extension. So again, we continue to work with Tim Zerwinski and also Judy Barrett and special counsel Johanna Schneider to make sure that we're approaching this project eligibility letter application process properly. So at this point, we will have public comment on 652 Canton Avenue. And the way that works, I would like to let people know too, because that's one of the real downsides of not being in the room together that you all can't see. There are 123 attendees, and I just think that it's important for you to know that. I wish I could name everyone for you since you can't see each other. But so We're going to keep this portion of the meeting to an hour. We may not need that whole hour. It's just that we do have some things that we have to get to. And if we don't get to everyone, then we will continue this to our regular meeting next week. And also there's also public comment next week. So that should be helpful too. I just want people to know that that we'll make sure you get heard. So because this is a bit larger than an average sort of topic, I'd like to give people a maximum of 10 minutes, but I really would like you to keep it shorter. And if you can, but just in case you do need that time. If people could, I see a couple people raise their hands, but for those of you who haven't done this before, I'd just like to go over the fact that if you're using your computer, you can go down to the bottom of the screen and you can raise your hand. If you're using your phone, and I do see many people on the phone, and you would like to raise your hand, you can press *9. And when you're recognized, if you're on the phone, if you press *6 to toggle your mute on and off, and I'll wait a moment because sometimes it can be a little difficult to get that to work the first time. So with that being said, I just wanted to help by setting my timer here, and I've got it set for 10 minutes. I would like to call on the first person with their name, their hand raised. And please, anyone, if I pronounce your name wrong, correct me. So our first person is Denise Quealy, I believe. And if you could state your address, that would be helpful.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So Denise Quayle, 64 Old Farm Road.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And just a point of order, I just have a question. I had a comment about the vaccinations. Is that something that you take comment on, or is that something you don't take comment on?
Well, in this portion, we wouldn't. Is it something that we can get you in touch with our director, or would you mind contacting me or Mr. Dennehy?
Yeah, no problem. I already sent an email about it. I just wanted to make a comment. Okay, no problem.
Okay,
that's why I raised my hand originally. So
okay. Oh, okay.
No, I'd like to make a comment though about this project. It is, been brought to my attention relatively recently, and was very surprised to see the enormity of it and the fact that it is so out of proportion with surrounding areas. And I understand the importance of 40B, and I thank you for your explanation of what the select board would be able to comment on, and what we are better going to the Board of Appeals, I'm assuming, to provide comments. But I would hope that the select board, in representing the town, obviously there are concerns in terms of traffic, in terms of safety, in terms of the schools, and the fact that we're already overcrowded in the schools, and what that would do to our school system and in our town in turn. The traffic, just as a neighbor here in this area, just going down Canton Ave every day as I do, it can take upwards of 10-15 minutes just to go from Indian Spring to the police station. And as we all know, we're blessed to have the Milton Hospital in the area, and adding this monstrosity, I'll call it, of a project with all the different parking spots and so on and so forth is just going to add to that length of time, and the fact that ambulances and fire trucks and everything else are trying to access Canton Ave to get to where they need to go, for the safety of our citizens. So that is a major concern. Never mind the fact that the structure itself is just totally inappropriate given the neighborhood and where it is. So just wanted to, I'm stating the obvious, and I know you know this, and I will follow up with emails, but just wanted to say that. As well as the schools, my children are not in the Milton Public Schools anymore, but I was the Milton Foundation for Education president for many years, as well as PTO president of the Cunningham schools. And I know the drain on the schools in terms of, years ago when I was in the school, and that has only gotten worse. So I just don't understand how a town will be able to accommodate the numbers of potential residents that could occupy, this particular structure, never mind the other 40 Bs in the town that are being proposed. And, my last comments are really more about the structure itself, which I don't want to bring up here because I think it's probably better, if I'm not mistaken, to bring that up to the Board of Appeals.
Well,
or-
I think you should, I think, you have a few minutes, so you can say something about that, because that also is something that we are, depending upon what it is, we can also address in our letter.
Sure. I mean, I've looked at the requirements of the 40B, and it's way out of line with what the requirements are. It has to be scale wise. It has to, match well with the neighborhood. In terms of, there are colonial houses around here with beautiful architectural interest and, scale. And I think we've done a wonderful job in Milton all across the town to try to honor that. And I'm in development myself. My husband and I are into construction. And whenever we try, we purchase a house to flip it or to live in it, we always make sure that the house would fit within the neighborhood. It's something that you do. When I worked for the city of Boston, same thing. Was always something that you would, want to make sure that you would do. So I just would hope that this structure, if they were to build something, they're going to build something there, would be in line with the area. Right now, with the number of parking spaces that are proposed and the size of the building, it is just way out of whack. I don't even, it doesn't match anything in the area. Other than the hospital, it looks like a hospital itself, which is ridiculous to put smack dab. It's not a beautiful housing, complex that would match the area. So I guess that's all I have right now to say. I'm sure there'll be more in the future, but I appreciate the opportunity to provide some input. And thank you so much for all your help.
Thank you, Ms. Quilly. And next we have Mr. Corcoran.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here representing 14 abutters and other neighbors to the property at 652 Canton Avenue. Essentially all of the property owners who surround the property on the easterly side of Canton Avenue, Holmes Lane, Mergewood Road neighborhood. I have submitted written comments, and attached to those written comments are two renderings. One is the sort of an aerial of the existing conditions showing the neighborhood, and two is an aerial of a mock-up prepared by Cheryl Tagayas that shows the massing and scale of the two developments proposed for both 648 and 652 Canton Avenue. I'll limit my comments orally to a handful of matters raised in the letter, but most importantly and most significantly is the fact that 652 Canton Avenue represents what I would call a massively substantial change to the application that's on file with the Board of Appeals for 648 Canton Avenue. By its own terms, the 652 Canton Avenue application states that it is designed to integrate with the proposed project located at 648 Canton Avenue and will share the proposed entry drive, which links through the 648 Canton Avenue property to Canton Avenue. I'd go further than that. I'd say that it is wholly dependent. 652 is wholly dependent on 648. I can't imagine that the drafters of the regulations would have contemplated such a substantial change to a project that is currently a pending hearing before the Board of Appeals, where the regulation speaks specifically to substantial changes, among other things, an increase of more than 10% in the number of housing units proposed. This development would go from 124 units at 648 Canton Avenue to a combined total of 204. That's a 65% increase in the number of units for a single project. There's no question that these projects are linked and cannot, 652, as I said, cannot happen without the access that's provided through 648. It also shares stormwater and utility connections as well. I echo what Denise Quealy said about the project being massively out of scale. Both projects are massively out of scale. To think that you would plop a 5-story and 4-story buildings over parking into residential neighborhoods just doesn't make sense. As you know, I've represented a number of the successful developments that have taken place in this town over the last 10 years, 15 years. Probably the one that would be most closely related to this would be Woodmere on Brush Hill Road. That is an 8-acre site. The combined properties here are approximately 7 acres. There are 36 units in townhomes spread around the Woodmere site. It's feasible that you would think about something of similar density here. And that would be a development that would be in character with the scale of the neighborhood. The project will have significant impact on the safe operation of the single driveway that accesses Canton Avenue. The 648 project already plans to develop 700 new trips to what is a very congested stretch of Canton Avenue. This project will essentially double that volume. The development continues to have no real access to either transit or shopping. It really doesn't comport with smart growth principles, although that has been suggested within the application letters. There is no real walkable means to access transit, which is more than half a mile away. There's sporadic bus route that come through, and it's several miles to any reasonable shopping area, East Milton, Dorchester Lower Mills, etc. Project will have significant impact on stormwater and groundwater flow. 2 very large buildings popped onto property where groundwater levels are approximately 2 feet below grade will force significant redirection of the flow of groundwater. The 648 application is sparse with respect to how it intends to handle and manage stormwater and groundwater flow. 652 will certainly exacerbate that condition. Finally, I would suggest that there will be a substantial loss of green space and open space. This property, as I can see it, will become approximately 70% impervious surface. That's the buildings themselves, the parking areas, and the driveways will cover approximately 70% of the area. There's little to no opportunity for enjoyable open space for residents of these new projects. There's no play area, and there's nothing reasonably nearby that is easily walkable. You know, Milton High School is a good quarter of a mile to half a mile away. Town Hall is about a quarter of a mile away, and it's really not a play area where you think you would say children to go ahead and play. So I think it creates an equity situation where we really don't have the type of open space that would be meaningful for the residents of those people the new residents coming to these buildings. So I would urge this board, I know the board is in prior comments last week, is thinking very seriously about this issue of substantial change. There's no question that these properties are linked and are codependent upon each other. It is a massively substantial change to proposal for 648. I think I'm surprised that Mass Housing did not raise that on its own motion. A quick evaluation should tell evaluators at Mass Housing that this property is linked Project is linked to 648, specifically when it's called out by the proposer, by the developer, in the body of its application. So I would urge this board to send this back to Mass Housing with a request that they reevaluate the issue of substantial change and call on the developer to either declare what its intentions are relative to these two projects or start over. But thank you for your time and wish you well as you represent the town with this very important process.
Thank you, Mr. Corcoran. Next, we have Alex Federico. If you could please give us your address as well. Oh, uh-oh. Okay, well, we lost Alex Federico, so I'm going to go on to the next person and hopefully we can have a chance at the end for Alex Federico to speak. So I'm looking at a phone number and the last three digits are 030. So if you could unmute and give us your name and address and your comment, please. 030, yes. If you could give us your name and address, please.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Janice Madden, and I've lived at 673 Canton Ave for the past 40 years. And I just want to say that I strongly oppose the proposals to build the 124 multi-family housing unit at 648 Canton Ave, and also the 80 housing unit at 652. And that's considered a Canton Ave extension. At least that's how I always thought about it. Like I said, we've lived there for 40 years, and times sure have changed. I just want to address the properties on Canton Ave between Reedsdale Road and Giles Road, which is approximately half a mile in length. In this in the half mile, the short distance, we have a library, town hall, fire department, police station, Milton Hospital, daycare center, 2 churches, Winter Valley, and then we have Giles Road, which is the entrance to the high school, and we have single-family homes. And now to address the traffic dilemma, Canton Ave has been it is the main road through our town, and it's been inundated with not only local traffic, but now bears commuters from other areas seeking alternative routes in and out of Boston. To make matters worse, in this half a mile, there are 3 traffic lights. One at Guile Road, leading to the high school, Thatcher Street, and Reedsdale Road. And during rush hour, nothing moves. Believe me, I know. I live on the street. Using technology, GPS, Waze, drivers are redirected off our major highways at the Milton exits onto Canton Ave as their shortcut to Boston. The housing project in question will definitely impact the heavy traffic Canton Ave is already experiencing. Just take this into consideration. At 648 Canton Ave, you have 124 units, okay? 652 Canton Ave extension has 80. Just think of this as cars, okay? Winter Valley has 160 senior residents, so 160 cars. Gulliver, Elm Street, Wendell Park, there are 175 homes there. Giles Road, it's the entrance to the high school. There are 1,036 students in our high school, okay? Now you got Indian Springs, there's 172. If everybody left their house in rush hour on our, Main Street, that's 711 cars, all trying to get in or out of Milton, really. Let's see, what else have I got to say? You know, I don't know if you know this, but I know years ago, Canton Ave was designated as an evacuation route, which means, you know, if there was ever a major catastrophe in Boston, traffic, ambulances, whatever, would be designated to come to Milton because we have the first hospital out of Milton. And, you know, then it would, you know, anybody who needed shelter would be directed to the Milton Hospital. What did I say? The Milton Hospital, the Milton High School. The flooding in the neighborhood is really become overwhelming. There, you know, and it creates a health problem. Canton Ave kind of slopes, and existing stormwater just flows down Canton Ave. Homeowners on, especially, well, a lot of the homeowners on our side of the street, Gulliver Street, Elm Street, Wendell Park, you know, like after the rainstorm at Christmas, all you heard was sump pumps during the heavy rainfall. Street in this little half a mile, the streets are sinking, the catch basins are sinking, sidewalks are cracking, and you have no idea, like that extension at 652 Canton Ave, there's a stream. Now on your blueprint, or whatever you want to call it, they call it an intermittent stream. Well, that stream is, like I said, directly across the street from us. When you have heavy rains, it's not a stream, it's not a brook, it's a river. And that flows underneath the street. And this is where we have problems. And it's washing, you know, like what would you call it? The pipe? I don't know. We've gone to the town hall a couple of, the drainage pipe there. It can't handle all that water. So what happens is it goes every which way under the street, and your street is sinking. We had I could go on and on. I think I said just about enough. Maybe I should give somebody else a chance. But you can't do this to us. Canton is the main road through our town, and it's for like these particular streets, it's our only egress. It's the only way in and out of Milton. We have no other alternatives. We all have to use Canton Ave. We do. We have no other means. So anyhow, that's it for me.
Thank you very much.
Listening to me.
Thank you. Next, we have Stephen Johnson. If you would please give your address and your comment.
Sure. My name's Steve Johnson. I live on 119 Gulliver Street, also known as likely the street that will have to have a street light put at the end of it in order to accommodate all of this additional number of vehicles and folks associated with it. I'm not going to restate a lot of the stuff that's already been said by everyone else, but I support everything that has already been said. Mm-hmm. You know, and a big thank you to Ned Corcoran and Cheryl Tagayas on the renderings that they helped circulate. It actually helped really cement in, I think, for many of us, the you know, how large the scale of this project is. Mm-hmm. And I know that, you know, while we're not all necessarily in school right now, this has constantly been a problem for our schools of overcrowding. And I think that in terms of our the longevity of the town, having something like that's supporting this number of new potential participants in school is putting an additional strain that we've never addressed as a community. An appropriate way of getting additional space for children to have a non-overcrowded classroom, right? And I think that this ultimately is going to lead towards more families leaving Milton and our tax base further shrinking overall as people look to, you know, especially if COVID continues, you know, that you start looking at families that are saying, well, why am I paying what I pay here to do these things when the school systems can't support having full-time in-person learning because we have space issues, right? Where I can go back, because It's great that the vaccine's out, but it's going to take a while. And I think it's going to bleed into next year. So I think schools and this project and the number of additional people that will put an additional strain on an overly strained school system is one. Obviously, the traffic congestions, et cetera. And the other thing I would just like to add is more of a question, and I know you guys can't address questions in this forum, but I'm super interested with the passage of the recent CPA. About what overall the board and zoning committees and things like that are thinking about, rethinking all current 40B proposals that are either that are in plan, so that we and an appropriate development of 40B housing. Because even when you look at these proposals for these two specific parcels, they're trying to skirt the fact that we are under provisioned in our 40B as a community in terms of not having enough of those. This is not being done for low income housing and for the right purposes. I mean, you look at it and it's doing the absolute minimum of affordable housing units in a monstrosity. So that's all I had to add to this. I think everyone else made really great points, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And if you'd like to email me, I can share it's up on the website, but I'd be happy to send you a link to the town's housing production plan. So that you could get our take on how this could be done well. I can give you a little background on the steps we've taken to. I'd be happy to do that. So next, I'm glad to see, Alex Frederico, that you're back. I'm sorry that we lost you somehow, but if you would please give your address and then your comment. Okay. Thank you. Christian, forgive me if I pronounce your last name incorrectly, Schatzel. You are recognized. If you would please give us your address and your comment, I would appreciate it.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name's Kristen Schatzel. I live at 693 Canton Ave, so sort of diagonally from where all this is going to be happening. I actually grew up at 488 Canton Ave. I've lived in Milton most of my life. I only moved away for a short 9 years. And I didn't go far. I lived in Dorchester and then Quincy. And I just moved back here a year ago. And I was pretty shocked to see, as most people have said, the scale of this project. I definitely support, progress, and especially this town does need more 40B housing. I understand that as a statewide need. I'm actually a real estate attorney and a real estate agent. But, like a lot of people have said, it's wild to me that somebody would think that this is a good idea for this particular location, where I would think a lot of the people looking for this type of housing would want certain amenities nearby. As Attorney Corcoran said, housing would require transit nearby, shopping, businesses, and just none of that is here. This is all residential. Canton Ave is basically Milton's main street. It goes all the way from Dorchester to Canton, and it's most of the length of the entire street is his residential, single family homes. A lot of them are historic, including the one that I live in. It was built in 1798. It was one of the first houses on the street. And I just don't understand how anything like this could work. You're looking at 200 units. That could mean anywhere between 200 and 800 people. And that's just kind of wild. So I would happily support development if it was more reasonable in scale and fit with the neighborhood, like a lot of other people have said. So I'll let you get on to the next comment. I know you probably
Thank
have
you
a
very
lot.
much.
Thanks.
Next, we have Ed O'Donnell. If you would please give us your address and your statement, please.
Hi, my name's actually Kathleen Sweeney, ex-wife. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are, and we can hear you loud and clear.
My address is 46 Gulliver Street in Milton. I think that the residents of Gulliver and Elm, one of our major concerns is the stormwater. During a typical rainstorm, we have huge issues with stormwater and flooded basements. My request would be that a stormwater analysis that would not only impact that site, but impact the residences of Gulliver, Elm, and Wendell Park, and Channing and Manning Street would also be necessary, because this is a constant issue that we are going through. And I would also like to reiterate any concerns that people have about the traffic.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure I got that done. Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised at this time. And so I on behalf of the board, I appreciate everyone's attendance. And but now we actually have a few more. Okay. So the next person is Judy Simildoro. And if you would give us your address and your comment, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I'm Judy Simildoro. I live at 625 Canton Ave. I have lived here since 1968. So I have seen the evolution of the traffic that runs through Canton Ave. I absolutely cannot imagine the addition of 200 plus cars on a daily level. I have to plan on when I can leave my house, not even my street, my driveway. Sometimes I can't even leave my driveway because of the traffic. I can't imagine adding to that, to what is already here. I appreciate the comments that have been made before. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. And next is Cecilia Bethany. If you would please give us your address and your comment. You're muted, just so you know.
I'm sorry about
Oh,
that.
no, that's quite all right. It happens to all of us.
99 Whittier Road, Milton here. And I agree with everything that has been said. The huge concern is safety and traffic. But if we go even a little bit further and we look at what the impact of the size of this project will be on the town, we have to look at the economic and the financial end of it as well. Additional emergency and service people, the school system, as has been mentioned, we will need new facilities. It's just out of whack with what the town needs right now. And as others have said, we do support the 40B housing, but it has to be in the proper location, and it has to have a greater amount of distribution between the market rate units and the 40B units. So looking at the project as a whole, I cannot even fathom how the town could approve of this project, knowing the safety concerns that we are facing, the water concerns we are facing, and the economic concerns that will put a lot of our elderly out of the town because of the increased costs that this will happen. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate everything that you do for the town.
Thank you very much. I do just want to take a moment to mention that 25% affordable percentage and 75% market is actually allowed by law, and that's I'm not saying that it can't be higher and that it couldn't be higher. I just wanted to let people know that that's the minimum threshold that the state allows, in case people didn't know that, but you probably did. While we can encourage mass housing to not approve this site and also suggest conditions if they did, once it gets to the zoning board of appeals, it's the approval process is a little different, and I think that you'll hear, as if you attend some of the other hearings, how that really works. Just to let people know that too. There'll be additional information as people go along. So our next person, I'm going to at this point have to keep people to 5 minutes, I think, because we have more people than I had anticipated, and we're coming up on 8 o'clock, and I want to make sure people have a chance to say something. Again, we can always go to the next meeting, but it's good to have it fresh now, since so many people are speaking. Let's see if we can get through everyone. The next person, it looks like Marty Carney. And if you could please correct me if I'm wrong, and also give us your address and your statement, please.
Madam Chair, I need to promote Marty Carney in order to allow them to speak because they are using an older version of Zoom. I would just make sure I have your permission before we go forward.
Yes, please.
Great. Just be a moment as she promotes.
Okay, thank you. I think you're with us. Marty Carney, if I have your name wrong, please correct me. And also, if you could give us your address and your statement, we would appreciate it. You may still be muted. And actually, that's very odd. Hillary, I should say Ms. Waite, do you see that?
I am not seeing an audio connection.
I'm not seeing an audio connection either.
It's possible their computer may not have a setup or a microphone.
Right. So if you could call in on your phone, those instructions are on the meeting agenda. And if not, please contact the board either through myself, Melinda Collins, or you can contact Mike Dennehy, because we can take your comment either in an email, or one of us is, I'm sure, happy to speak with you by phone. So my apologies for the technical difficulties. So just so people have my email address, it's mcollins@townofmilton.org. Okay, and make sure it's Town of Milton, because you don't want to contact M. Collins at the police department. Okay, so our next person is number 462, the last 3 digits of the telephone number. If you could please tell us your name, your address, and make your statement. And you're muted, so you'll want to press *6 to unmute. The telephone number 426. If you press *6 to unmute.
The last 3 of that number is 462.
Sorry, 462. Oh, my apologies. It's been a long day. 462. Okay, we will come back. And my apologies about that again. The next person is Pat. If you could give us your full name and your address. And yes, now you're unmuted. Great.
My name is Patrick Marks. I live at the 632 Canton Ave property. It's on the same side as 648 Canton Ave, just diagonal. I'd like to say a few things, mostly reiterating what people have said before. We actually moved from Boston to this home 2 years ago and really invested our savings, all of what we had, to move to a town like Milton and kind of updated this property so it fit in with the neighborhood. And it's really discouraging to think that our dream could just get taken away just like that by some rich out of town person just throwing and plopping in developments just to make a profit. I don't think anybody's really fooled by the 40B attached to this project. I'd also like to say that I've installed 2 sump pumps in this basement, and they stay on all day. I co-sign the idea of getting some type of water displacement analysis in this neighborhood. There's no doubt in my mind that it'll affect surrounding homes, and it's a safety and hazard as well. This road right in front of us is the highway. If there's a police emergency, if there's a fire emergency, if there's an ambulance, paramedic emergency, this is the road that gets used for all of that. To add 200 units, call it 700 people or so, to this area, you add in all the Ubers and anything else that goes along with it. It's not a matter of if something bad is going to happen. It's just when, where somebody's not going to be able to get to where they need to go because of all the added congestion to the area. Most of the other stuff, like I said, is just more of what other people have said. I really appreciate everybody in the neighborhood being involved and part of this. I really hope that we don't have to weigh the option of moving out of this neighborhood because, again, this is where we want to stay. And unfortunately, our neighbors at 640 already had that decision. And as all this came up, they decided to move. So hopefully the neighborhood voice is heard amongst the people that need to hear it, and I look forward to a positive resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to try this again. My apologies to the person with the telephone number and the last 3 digits, 462. You're acknowledged. If you could give us your name and your address and your comment, that would be appreciated. So you're muted, so you'd press *6 on your phone to unmute. Okay, so we're going to move on to Sean Fahey. And please correct me if I pronounced your name wrong, and also give us your address and your statement, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay, I am on my cell phone.
Okay.
Okay,
nope,
thank you.
We've got it.
Terrific, thank you. And I appreciate having an opportunity to speak to the board tonight. I live at 202 Old Farm Road in, I am a born and raised Milton resident. I'm 56 years old. I've been here for all but 4 years of my life. So I fall in this group of people that very much love the town and appreciate everything that it has to offer. I support many of the comments from the previous speakers tonight in opposition to the project. And without repeating so much of what has been said with regard to the ability for traffic to be managed on Canton Ave or the capacity we have in the town to accept this many units. And, quite honestly, I think it's not an appropriate development for the parcel of land, as that parcel of land is in the character of the neighborhood, as Denise Quayle had started with her comments earlier tonight. For those that aren't familiar with this type of construction, a wood frame building over a concrete podium parking structure, I'd suggest drive to North Quincy and look at the development that's being built at North Quincy, and that is exactly what will be built in terms of the size and scale of a building. Now, I'm about a half a mile where I live on Old Farm Road from this building, and I would fully expect that the 4th and 5th floor of that building will easily, have a view all the way down Old Farm Road based on the height of the structure. It's well beyond what's reasonable for development for this particular parcel of land within this neighborhood. And it falls, unfortunately, into the category of what I would call disruptive development. This isn't development that's appropriate and complementary. Quite honestly, it's development of a disruptive nature. So, as Ned had said earlier tonight, 452 is not a development that could be achieved without 648. And I don't know how anyone could consider this an acceptable modification to 648. I would think at a minimum this process starts over, given the size and scale of adding 652 to 648. But I would urge the board to consider deeply and considerably what this development is, and urge all the residents, not just the 123 on the call tonight, but all to voice their opinion for what type of development they feel is appropriate and what they feel is not appropriate. So thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Okay. Our next is Joey Pugh. And if you could please give us your address and your statement.
Yes, thank you. I'm at 667 Canton Avenue. And, I don't want to, repeat a lot of what's been said. I think that everyone's made really good points. There's just one piece that I would just comment on that has been mentioned, which would be about traffic and any analysis that, has been done or is planned to be done really, could be considered pretty, irrelevant in terms of the pandemic. We're not really seeing normal traffic at the moment. So any kind of studies that are done, I don't think are going to be, do justice to what Canton Ave really is like outside of the pandemic. And then secondly, I think that, Mr. Wells and Mr. Zulis were pretty animated last week about ensuring that, we are looking at these as one single project. And, I really appreciated, them speaking up. And I think that it's super important that, we take all of what's being said, but really funnel it and channel this in a really aggressive manner to ensure that, we're not being, left behind in terms of 648, moving forward. And, I know that last week you guys had mentioned, possibly looking at a 60-day extension for 652. So I just want to ensure that, we have enough time to, make sure that this is being looked at as one project as opposed to, waiting for 30 days for 652. I'm not 100% sure how the whole process works in terms of timeline, but just want to make sure that 648 isn't moving fast where we can't get in front of them to let them know how we feel about the one project. Thanks.
Thank you. So we'll address that in our talk with Mr. Serwinski. But as of now, 648 is not scheduled to be heard. It'll be opening on the 12th, but it's not supposed to be heard until March. And we're working on timing and making sure that we're doing everything that we can. And it's already been linked in the application, so that's something that will be making points on. Our next person, and we only have a few minutes till our hour is up, I think. So we have 4 more hands. 2 of them so far we haven't been able to actually hear. And I encourage those people, if for some reason there's been a technical problem, to get in touch with myself or Mr. Dennehy. Our next person is F. Hamada. If I've pronounced your name wrong, please help me pronounce it correctly. And also give us your address and your statement, please.
Hi, my name is Zina Hamada, and I live on 145 Whittier Road. I just have to say that when I saw the how big this project is, all I was able to think of were our schools. I work in the Milton Public Schools, and the number of people who are going to move into that project is huge. Also, when I go to work every day, I go down Whittier Road, I take a left on Canton Ave, down Blue Hill Ave, so as not to take a right on Canton Ave, because traffic there is terrible, especially if there's a car at the lights trying to take a left on Thatcher Street, and then everybody's backed up. So I can't imagine what's going to happen on that street coming out onto Canton Ave, how backed up they will be with all this traffic, and what will happen to our schools. I know that everybody has already stated that, but I have to say that this is a big concern for me as a resident and as someone who works in the school system. So thank you.
Thank you. Next is George Simpson. If you could please give us your address and your statement. George Simpson, you're recognized and you're unmuted. So if you'd like to give us your address and your statement, please. Okay. We'll move on then. The next person is Arati Sekalaris, please. If you would give us your address and tell me if I've pronounced your name incorrectly, and your statement, please.
Hi, you did pretty good with the name. It's Arati Sekalaris.
Arati, thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I live at 52 Whittier Road, so I've definitely heard some of my neighbors tonight, which is great. I just want to reiterate many of the points that other people have addressed tonight. And more specifically, I just want to say that Canton Ave can feel like a raceway. And I've been requesting a speed tracker for a long time. So I'm super happy that in the last few months, the town has installed one between basically where I'm on Canton Ave and Whittier Road and before Indian Spring Road. I don't know if it makes an impact, but seeing it there to remind people of their speed as they're approaching the high school gives me hope that people will recognize their speed and also acknowledge that there is a school here. And, you know, we do have students who, some are in cars, but there are plenty of people that walk in this neighborhood. And I myself am one of those people. And I just want to add a little bit of color regarding Canton Ave and being a walker here. You know, it can be quite terrifying to walk along Canton Ave depending on the time of day. It's something I avoid, but sometimes if I want to take a longer walk, either to go down to the library or walk around like Whittier Road through Indian Spring Road, and you know, you're on Canton Ave and it feels like a raceway, and it's scary for a resident, I think. So I just wonder, or I just want to point out that, you know, right now, sure, we don't have kids going to the high school as we normally would, but there are also people who walk in this neighborhood to go to school. And I just worry that if we have more car traffic because of, so many more housing units being incorporated onto Canton Ave, I wonder what happens to the people who walk or want to walk or imagine walking. So I'll leave the walking part at that. And I just want to also add, I think it's incumbent on all of us in the town to also consider, like, what is the inclusion aspect to look like for the people who are going to live in these new developments if they were to happen, because I think the sort of the spirit of 40B is to enhance like a social and economic diversity in towns. And to me, it seems like this development, sure, it's a monstrosity. I agree with everything everyone else has said, but I think it also is, it's sort of secluded from the rest of the neighborhood and the town in such a way that because it has limited access and incorporation to the rest of the town, that it will sort of by sort of de facto be a separate section that I don't think will have the same benefits or inclusion and community feel that make living in Milton really, comfortable and warm and welcoming. So I do think that that is something that should also be conveyed. Like, they're also going to be residents of Milton, but would hate for those people to feel like they actually like don't belong or aren't part of the community. And that's all for now. Thank you.
And let's see. So at this point, we have one new person who I haven't called on before, and there are initials MEGHA. If that person could give us their name and address and comment.
Hi, this is Megha Malik. I'm calling from 65 Indian Spring Road. And I first want to thank everybody for the opportunity to be able to speak today and share our concerns, and also echo everybody's sentiments as have been shared until this point. I was listening to this conversation with my 9-year-old, and while most of the points have been shared, I think as a kid listening in, she raised a concern that I want to bring out, that going to Collicott and Cunningham on the school bus today already takes her 40 minutes. She's an elementary school kid. There are others on the bus who are elementary and middle school kids who are going to their schools and sitting for 40 minutes today. If this 40B gets constructed, then we've talked about traffic multiple times, and we talk about adults sitting in the traffic. I think we also need to remember that our kids will be sitting in those buses for much longer, and how it impacts school timings and other schedules is going to be equally important. So just wanted to bring that to notice, appreciate everybody's comments. That's the only addition I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Actually, we have one other new person, or new name here, Nancy Chisholm. If you would give us your address and your statement, please. You're muted, Ms. Chisholm.
Hi, Melinda. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So I'm at 129 Gulliver Street, and I came on a little bit late, but I did want to bring to either to reiterate or ask that consideration be given to folks that will start to use Channing Lane as a way to avoid getting stuck in the traffic on Canton Ave. So this specifically relates to folks coming home, but also that live in the neighborhood, but really for parents and students at the high school. Cutting off of Thatcher Street onto Channing, as you know, cuts through both Wendell Park, Elm, and Gulliver Street. The road, while it's treacherous, is used every day by probably a few hundred cars. And I'm really fearful that not only will the impact be on Canton Ave, but we're also going to see it spill over into Thatcher Street and these three streets and impact, these are densely populated with young children. And I think that that should definitely be considered and addressed, that there's going to be spillover into these three streets, and it's going to impact the quality of the lives of the, I think someone said 150, 175 families that live here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I think it was 175.
Yeah.
Okay, actually, there's one other new name, Stanley Chan. If you would please give us your address and your statement.
Hi, how you doing? I live in 17 Fox Hill Lane. I want to go on record to oppose this project. I think everybody, in the neighborhood have made their points clear. I don't want to reiterate that. But what has impacted me, I want to make sure it's heard, is the school systems. I think the school bus comment that was made was absolutely on point. My kids, I have 3 young kids. I go to the elementary school, one going to middle school now. But when they were going to elementary school, not in addition to the 40 minutes, they were also late for school almost every day for the first 2 or 3 weeks because the school couldn't handle it. The bus system couldn't handle it. So teachers are impacted. Other kids are impacted. My kids are impacted. That's all I have to add. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much. I want to give Mr. Simpson one more chance. If you'd like to give us your address and your statement, and you will be the last person. Okay, I think we're finished. Thank you very much, everyone. We really appreciate your taking the time this evening. And if you have any additional comments, you can send them to us in writing. And you're always free to call either myself or Mr. Dennehy. And thank you. And just to let people know that our next item is to have a discussion with the planning director, Tim Zerwinski, and the board. Judy Barrett will not be able to join us this evening. She has another meeting she's at, no surprise. But we'll talk now about the timing to collect comments also from staff and other boards and committees. Our board routinely looks at these, and then it will be that, but the response will be the initial draft will be done by Mr. Zerwinski, and then we'll come back and discuss that in one of our meetings, and also post it online so that people can review it, and we can rework wherever we like to, and prior to sending it out. So there'll be another chance for people to give us comments on the actual letter. All right, thank you, members of the board, for being so patient and for listening to our residents. Really appreciate it. Mr. Zerwinski, I know that you had a timeline that you were thinking about as far as asking staff for their comments, but also typically the board has a site walk, and I know that Mass Housing hasn't been scheduling those. However, we in the past on the last 2 were able to have access to the property that I believe Mr. Dennehy or you coordinated, so that the board could split up and go, and there wouldn't be an open meeting law violation, but that we could look at the property together with the planning board and the Conservation Commission.
Thank you, Chair Collins. We can, Mr. Dennehy and I worked together on that the last time for the 2 projects at 16 Amer Road and 936 Brush Hill Road. I think, as it kind of relates to the splitting up of those sessions, if I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, there there are a few concerns just about the size of the sites and the location of those sites, and wanting to split up sort of the group. So I think it was less a matter of, you know, whether or not to sort of post a public meeting, and more of a matter of just sort of having a site that was large enough to accommodate folks if they wanted to come out. So we can kind of figure that out. I defer.
Oh, we lost you.
To the board as to when their preference is. Can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to get out of the line of fire from my little guy who's about to go to sleep. But if I go too deep into the kitchen, you lose reception. So I apologize for that. I would defer to the board on what your preference is on when we can when you like to do a site walk. Obviously, it depends upon the property owner.
Right. Oh, we lost you again.
Setting up this, you know, the delegated. So if you all provide some as to when that, we can reach out to the. Oh goodness, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. So I think one of the issues for the board actually is open meeting law, because we can't post a meeting and have the residents who would like to attend be there. And so we want to avoid the possibility of any deliberation. And that's one of the reasons that we did split up last time as well. So I think that we'll probably be looking to do that again, because we just want residents to have access to any deliberation that we do.
Okay.
So
So we'll work through that with the property owner. And if next week is good, or the weekend, whatever you all want to do, we can present that to the property owner and see if we can make it happen.
Okay, well, perhaps we can coordinate that offline, because we have to see when they're also available. But just if people could forward their availability to Mr. Dennehy, or Mr. Dennehy, if you want to reach out and let people know what you want from us. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. At this point, also, Mr. Zerwinski, when will you have all the comments that you need? Do you have a target date for all the comments that you need, and then a target date for delivering a draft letter to the board?
So I've already solicited the relevant department heads for comments on this. That solicitation kind of came on the heels of asking for comments on the East Milton project for the ZBA. So there's a little bit of a backlog there. But I think given the extension to February 25th, what I would want to do is sort of back into a firm deadline from, you know, based on how many meetings the select board has prior to that deadline. I know you would probably want to have at least 2 meetings to discuss a draft, one to, you know, open it up and allow people to sort of have a chance to look at it, and another one to finalize that draft. So I think I haven't taken a good look at the calendar in terms of when the select board meets in February. But my general timeline would probably be, you know, a deadline for staff to get me comments, you know, shortly before the end of January, and maybe about a week of turnaround on a draft that I could submit to the select board for your consideration.
Great.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
To Mr. Zawinski's point, this board will meet Wednesday, February 10th and Wednesday, February 24th. That schedule should coincide with the letter being submitted to Mass Housing by February 25th.
Okay. And I think that we heard at least one comment or concern from a resident about timing and how we're addressing this. And again, I think that this is something for the board to talk about and ask questions of Mr. Zerwinski, but I know that we've also been talking to Johanna Schneider and Judy Barrett, trying to understand the best way to address the connection that was made in this application to this other project, basically creating a mega project. I don't really have a better term for it at this point, so my apologies for my artless term there. But however, I think that we do have a wide enough window, considering that this isn't being heard until March. I did reach out to just to the ZBA through their coordinator, Beverly Sutton, to make sure that nothing has changed so far. And I think that there's also an opportunity to consult more also with Mass Housing. I think we've also heard, and we've also wondered ourselves at how this occurred, because Mass Housing is handling 648 or has already, and now it's at the ZBA. But there may be an opportunity to reach out and talk to them and get some guidance on how they're thinking about this, so that we can really make our point strongly and effectively. So do any members have, yes, Mr. Wells?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your patience tonight, and thank you to all the residents who called in. To the resident who said I was animated last week, I'm thinking more strategically. Everyone has a boss. This isn't, when you look at the projects that have happened off of Canton Ave over the history, or at least my time, Quistit Brook, Winter Valley, and even the hospital, which is a regional hospital, only has 98 beds. Today, I spent an hour just watching the construction at Henry's, which, Katie, you can tell me if I'm wrong. Is that 38 units? Am I right? Is it right? How many units total?
36.
It's under 40. It's under 40 units. And you look at the size of that, the density of that, it's a pretty big building. Here we're talking about taking something that is bigger than Winter Valley, perhaps bigger even than Milton Hospital, and dropping it into this neighborhood. And my thought is, as I said, everyone has a boss. I think we should write a letter to the governor and invite him to come here to a site walk. It's one thing to create a law, but it's another thing to come and see how it can actually negatively impact a neighborhood. I mean, when Mr. Cochran talked about Woodmere, he's correct. You look and you see how that blended in. We don't get any calls. I mean, it's beautiful. Quistit Brook, the same thing. I just think that we have to do more. I think we need to reach out to Senator Timilty, Representative Driscoll. I think we need every single aspect that we can use, not just legally, but politically, to try and make people understand just how outrageous. I mean, I can't even fathom 200 units on a shared driveway is just. When Mr. Fahey said about, I know the building he's referring to in North Quincy, it's at Newport and Hancock. You'll see that building all over town. Not to mention all the other things that we normally hear: public safety, traffic, anything you do in Milton. If you get a curb cut, you're going to affect traffic in this town. But I mean, it's one thing to come up with 140 and then add another 80. I think that we need to ring every single bell. And if that means that we as a board collectively write a letter to the governor of this Commonwealth, invite him to come here. 2 years ago, he came to the Hoosier Club and he spoke about how much he liked efforts to preserve the character of places like the Hoosier Club. Sadly, the Hoosier Club didn't survive in the way it was supposed, but the building survived. Here we're talking about changing the entire character of this neighborhood, not just one neighborhood, all those neighborhoods, all of them. And it just, he may not respond to it, but I think it's worthy of us to think about it. And perhaps I'm looking to see if Mr. Zulus gets animated to my comments tonight. It may not be a bad idea to have him come and see this. It's beyond description. It's like, I can't even, I wish we had veto power, because I would vote no yesterday, today, tomorrow, and every other day. So thank you for that. But that's just, I want you to think about it. Perhaps we should write to the governor and at least invite him here to come to a sidewalk and see what is proposed for this neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Mr. Doyle? You're muted, Mr. Doyle.
I apologize. Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 points, if I may. One, I just want to first make sure that our 40B consultant, Judy Barrett, will receive a copy of the tape of all of the comments from that were made this evening, so that she has them firsthand as well. And secondly, I'd like to go to the second bullet on our agenda and address topography and environmental resources, bringing to mind your comment earlier about having the Conservation Commission on the sidewalk, and mentioned in our earlier discussion at the last meeting about certainly having the conservation agent do a sidewalk of 652 to see about wetlands delineations in the area, etc. But all of this called to mind commission work in the general area in the past. And with that experience in mind, I'd like to suggest, noting those 2 points of topography and environmental resources, along with the comments that were made by several of the speakers tonight, that we seriously consider having a major engineering firm conduct a hydrological study of that greater area, not just that specific site, but the areas that abut it and are influenced by it, neighborhoods such as Wendell Park, Gulliver, Elm, where, by the way, the chair of the Conservation Commission once lived and knows full well what water problems were there in the past prior to any such construction. I think that study ought to be done by a firm determined by the town, but at the cost of the developer. And that should give us the type of information that we need to have relative to potential underground as well as above ground displacements, stormwater metrics, hard numbers that are needed in order for any authority to make the types of decisions that are required for development of this proposal. And like Richard said, this is a mega development encompassing these 2 pieces of property. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Doyle. Ms. Conlon?
So, Madam Chair, I think the immediate next step is for us to focus our attention on our letter to Mass Housing and to raise this issue of substantial change, which we may not all have been animated last week, but I don't think there was any daylight that anybody felt that this was not a substantial change. I think we're all on board with that point. So I read Mr. Corcoran's letter. I thought it made a lot of good points. I think that's a good starting basis for Tim doing his drafting, as well as his own comments and his own discussions with the department heads. And I think we should focus our attention on those, and we should look into the issue that Arthur raised about the conservation issues and whether it makes sense to do that at this stage, or whether that's a Board of Appeals step, or whether that's something that we could do at this stage. But I think that our focus should be on getting our sidewalks scheduled, whether it's breaking it up as you discussed, or which I think is probably the only way in the COVID environment to handle it. Setting up those sidewalks, getting our comments and making sure our letter is very strong, raises all of the points that are relevant. And we can consider what other, any of these other suggestions that are being made, whether it makes sense to do these, but I think that's our immediate next step.
Thank you. I agree with that. Mr. Zulus, you're muted.
Can you hear me now? I'm having
Yes.
a difficult internet night, but so I agree with that as a next step. I think it's important that because of the admitted integration and cohesion between these 2 adjacent projects, the community impacts, and this is really a reiteration of what many have said, the community impacts of these two projects, which constitute, as Ms. Quealy said, one monstrosity, need to be considered together. And then the question, as we've alluded to, is procedurally, how do we best accomplish that? Now, Mr. Pugh pointed out the concern about 648 steaming down the track with the Board of Appeals, and as the chair pointed out, the Board of Appeals intention on January 12th is just to introduce the project and not to substantively discuss it until March. And so then the question is, do we accomplish the end of having these community impacts considered together by reaching out to Mass Housing as part of the project eligibility response? That seems to be the way to go. You know, it may be the case. Well, let me step back. The issue of substantial change, seems to me we need to focus on the community impacts here. The substantial change really in the regulations really relates to the Housing Appeals Committee step in the process. So I think we need to focus on the fact that this is this kind of piecemeal approach where you have a developer buy a piece of property, start through the process, buy the adjacent property, and then start through the process again. This kind of piecemeal approach seems to be an end run around the normal mass housing procedure. It seems to me we need to point that out, and whether we do it in the context of substantial change, I'm not sure that that's the way to go, but I think Katie's right. I think Richard's right too. Richard, I don't think we take anything off the table, but I think we need to focus on making sure that these projects are considered together, because the key is the community impacts of these projects together. And as Richard pointed out, 200 units as opposed to 124. Or 204 units as opposed to 124. Right. And so that to me is the most important thing to do at this point.
Yeah. No, I appreciate everybody's suggestions, and yes. So procedurally, we'll continue to work on how to be most effective. So thank you everyone for your comments. Are there any other comments or questions or, okay, great. And Mr. Zawinski, Ms. Conlon?
Just in terms of the timing, I think I heard Tim say that he's expecting department comments by the end of January, but I think if we could get a draft either by our January, I think we're meeting on the 27th?
Yes.
Or February 10th. I mean, the 10th, I think at the latest for the initial draft, but if we could get it before then, that would be helpful, because I think we put everything into this comment letter, all of these issues that we're talking about.
Right. And I think we've said in the past, if the comment letter is ready earlier, then sending it earlier could have some advantages if we can do that. So yes, that would be helpful, even if it's not a complete draft, but something for us to just start looking at. But
Madam Chair, I think that is that's doable. I think there's a lot of these letters that I don't want to use the term boilerplate, but a lot of what has been addressed with the previous projects is the same across some of these other projects. So I think there's a lot of, we depend on our staff and our department heads to provide their insight and their expertise. But I think there's a lot that can go into this draft for consideration, even without that input for a late January select board meeting. So I can get to work on that.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. Okay. Mr. Zulus?
And I think the point was made, but Tim, I think everyone agrees that we want to focus on the community impacts of these two projects together as part of that letter. And I think there's consensus on that. So I hope that should be part of the response here.
I hear you loud and clear on that.
Great. Thank you. Excellent. Okay. So our next agenda item 5, We actually haven't received any communication about this item, about the Department of Public Utilities docket number 20-120, the proposed rate increase for customers of Boston Gas doing business as National Grid. So, Mr. Freitag, we may have brought you here for nothing, but we're, if you have an update for us, then we would like to hear from anyone in the public who has a comment on this.
Absolutely. Well, good evening, Madam Chair. Kevin Freitag, Office of Town Council. Since the last select board meeting, I did reach out to the DPU and let them know that Milton would not be filing a motion to intervene in the evidentiary hearing in this matter regarding rate changes at the DPU. I also followed up with the Assistant Attorney General that's handling the case and let him know that Milton was at the ready to assist in any way that we could. And other than that, I'm at tonight's meeting to see if there is any interest in either giving the DPU notice that we'd like to participate in the Zoom public hearing that's going to be taking place. I believe that takes place later in January 26th and the 28th. We have to give notice by January 22nd if we want to do that. We also have the opportunity to submit written comments no later than January 29th. So we still have the opportunity to do both of those things if there's any interest on behalf of the board in doing so.
Mm-hmm. Before we go to the public comment portion of this, do members have any questions or comments, or do people wish to consider putting in a written comment, whether or not we have resident input? I would just, for those who don't really know about this, the Attorney General's office has a fund of $550,000 to to investigate this proposed rate increase on behalf of the residents who would be affected by it. So the Attorney General's office is working on this, just so people know. Do members wish to say anything? No. Okay.
So Madam Chair, I would just say I do have an interest in providing a written comment on behalf of our residents.
A cup of coffee.
I know we haven't. You can
get the milk out.
Oh.
Yeah.
I know we. Sorry, Mike. We just heard you about the milk, Mike. So I am interested in providing a written comment on behalf of the residents, and hopefully we'll hear from some. But this is a significant rate increase for many of our residents. So if we have until the 29th, it seems to me we can put together something between now and then, and maybe inspire some comments from residents to weigh in themselves on these increases.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Doyle.
I just want to add to what Mike said, to the point that at some later point, we do not need somebody coming back to us and saying, well, we did not hear from you. Mm-hmm. We've done something that you do not now like, but you had an opportunity and you didn't capitalize upon it. So I think it's in the interest of our community for us to go on record.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And just to remind other people that that our town council, Kevin Freitag, did contact the Assistant Attorney General who's working on this to let him or her know. I don't know who it is, that Milton also stands at the ready to help in whatever way we can. So I do appreciate that. So at this point, I'm going to go back to our attendees list and just invite anyone who would like to speak to this National Grid rate increase, to the base rate for service for natural gas. Please raise your hand. you can toggle down to the bottom of your screen to raise your hand if you're on a computer, or if you're on the phone, you can press *9 in order to raise your hand. So I'll just give people a moment. Well, I don't see anyone, but I would like to remind people that the board is happy to take written comments. You can send them to Mr. Dennehy, mdennehy@townofmilton.org. You're welcome to send them to me. If you send them to Mr. Dennehy, he's happy to make sure that the board gets them as well. But we're happy to hear from you. And we have until the 22nd to provide a comment, I believe. Okay, thank you. Just going back to the comment. So if the board is to draft something, I guess I'm wondering about process and how we might like to handle that.
So just to clarify, I thought the date was the 29th.
I'm sorry. Maybe it's the 22nd that we have to say if we're participating on the 26th or the 28th, and it's the 29th for the written comment. Thank you.
No. Arthur, not to throw anything on you, but do you want to try to work together on something on this?
Oh, Arthur, yeah, you're good. Go ahead.
Oh,
I think that was a yes. Was that a yes?
Yes. Could you hear me? It was an affirmative.
Okay.
I thought I'd use a legal term that he'd recognize.
I like
I
it.
hope I wasn't presuming too much, Arthur.
That's great. Well, we all appreciate your working on this, and I'm sure that Mr. Freitag would be happy to help coordinate and on that. So that's lovely. Mr. Freitag, is there anything else at this point that we should be thinking of, or?
I don't think so, Madam Chair. I think you have everything.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so maybe Arthur and Mike, maybe when you have something for us, you can just let Mike Denny and myself know so we can get it right on the agenda. And I'll do my best to actually get it on the agenda. So I know that's happened in the past.
If I could, maybe we should put it on the agenda for next week. It may be a heavy lift to get something, but just to get, maybe we can get something in, some kind of a template going.
Great.
Just to, not a final, but just some thoughts on the direction we want to head in.
Okay. Oh, that would be very helpful. Okay. I have that
Madam
done.
Chair,
Yes, Mr. Dennehy.
just from a timing perspective, just let me get the date straight. So next Wednesday, the 13th, is our regular monthly meeting.
Right.
There'll be a draft submitted at that time to discuss. When do we have to file this?
The 29th.
29th. Okay, so it could be heard on the 27th as well.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay, great. Okay. So our next item is the Shared Streets and Spaces grant for Franklin Street, the Winter Plaza concept. And again, we have our planning director, Mr. Zerwinski, with us. And I will say that there's been a lot of feedback, and in having a discussion with Mr. Zerwinski and Mr. Dennehy today, just to review the amount of work that the Planning and Community Development Department is fielding at the moment, to see how much additional effort could possibly be put into this prior to submitting it. They're really challenged at the moment. as far as being able to put a lot of extra resources to answer all of the questions, as this was really meant to be a quick pilot to see what might work there, to give a community benefit for people to have a socially distanced outdoor space just to socialize in. I mean, people certainly could bring food there, but it was really designed as a public gathering space, and one that could be quickly altered or taken down for, if it became evident that there was a need there. But as I said, in speaking with Mr. Zawinski and Mr. Dennehy, it just at the moment seems as if they can't quite handle the additional work it would take. Now, there is the last application deadline is the 29th. So if for some reason they were able to do that extra work and then, come back, we could certainly take it up again. And so if people would like to defer, we can do that. But if people would like to say something about the project too, I know that members were probably ready, having reviewed it and having had it presented at the, initially at the last meeting. I don't want to cut that off. And I also want to thank Mr. Zawinski. There are many other towns and cities who have done these sorts of short-term projects and, to create such a public benefit. And I just really appreciate the creativity and trying to help people in this difficult environment have a new way to socialize that's safe and actually looked quite beautiful too, which I appreciate the aesthetics. So Mr. Zawinski, I didn't know, I see that you're unmuted. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, I think so thank you for that rundown. I think we had been pursuing a very aggressive schedule on this application for this grant. I think given the need of our business district, I think small businesses are kind of in a really tough spot across the Commonwealth, and I think this grant program is meant to give municipalities the tools to sort of help out their Main Street districts. As well as, help out other things. I know obviously we did the Brook Road Diet as part of this grant program in the summertime. So it's really all about helping people move sort of safely and responsibly during the pandemic in the outdoors. It was an aggressive timetable because we wanted to get in at the early January application deadline. It's not often that it's on the front page of the newspaper before I have a chance to brief the select board. So I apologize for that, but it happened. But that actually did really stir things up in the neighborhood, I think in a good way and a bad way. We've gotten a lot of feedback from folks, that, we weren't able to get due to the sort of aggressive timetable that we had set for ourselves. And I think that, we'd like to at least start to try to address some of the concerns that we heard and really try to get people on board in the next couple of weeks. There is a January 29th application deadline. I think a lot of the work has already been done in terms of working with our design consultant and coming up with a concept that we think is workable. And I think it's now just sort of an issue of, just helping people understand the project a little bit more, the temporary nature of it. It really is. There's a term that we use in planning that the pilot is the process. You do these quick interventions, you test things out in the street that are kind of low stakes and kind of low impact. And if they turn out to be high impact, then as you said, you take it down. Or if it winds up being wildly successful, then you think about how can we formalize this in a more permanent way. And so that's what we're after here. I think I definitely understand the concerns that we've heard via email, and I fielded a couple phone calls today as well. But I think, we'd like to maybe spend the next couple weeks trying to address some of those concerns and see if we can, potentially get something together that people can support, for the January 29th deadline. I think we want to make sure that people are behind this thing. It's supposed to be something that is, brings folks together, brings folks to the business district in a socially distant and responsible way, and is really an amenity for the neighborhood. And so, we want people to be on board. So I think, stay tuned. We may be back with this application. Again, understanding that, given some of the other stuff that we've got on our plate, we obviously want to make sure we're managing our workload in the department. But I think, this is something that we'd like to ideally be able to do. And so, like I said, stay tuned. And, thanks for putting us on the agenda for this one.
Oh, of course, thank you. I would like to say, if you are bringing this back, originally the thought had been to have for it to be presented this evening, and then for us to have people be able to comment on it on the 13th. And since our next meeting after the 13th is the 27th, it would be helpful if we could make sure that we that it's presented and that people have a chance to weigh in. So if you could just keep us apprised of your timing and your thoughts. And I would like to also have other members have a chance to ask a question or make a comment if you like. Ms. Conlon?
I'll defer to Mike if he wants to go first.
Oh, okay. Mr. Zulus?
Sure. So I think the big concern from the members of the neighborhood is the traffic and how the traffic is going to be rerouted. I think it's a great innovative plan. I think it could add a lot. But as I understand, from the neighborhood, it's really the traffic. So Tim, that'd really be the question to ask. How do we think? What impact do we think this is going to have on the traffic? Not asking for an answer now, but just I think when you address it, I think some idea of how we think this is going to work with the traffic there would be important to know.
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming that with the traffic, Mr. Zulus, you're also referring to our loading and unloading. Yeah.
That's a big part of it. That's a big part of it.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you. Mr. Dennehy?
Yeah, I know we're not here to talk about this evening, but just know that Mr. Zawinski has followed through with both the police chief, fire chief, and DPW Director Berkeley. All three of them had some comments, both pros and cons, especially Chief King. We had a long conversation today about three things that he identified from a traffic perspective that could be impacted by something like this. Obviously, this time of the year, DPW Director is always worried about snow removal. And then obviously the fire chief is worried about access issues. But Tim has crossed his T's and dotted his I's. There's still a little more work to do on this, but to that point, Member Zulus, yeah, that's very well taken.
And we're also on the agenda for a traffic commission next week to discuss this.
Great.
I've had those initial conversations. I appreciate Mr. Denny talking about all the I's and the T's. There's still a few more to be dotted and crossed, but we want to make sure that happens. We'll be at the traffic commission to talk about some of those issues. But I think I don't have the answers right now. I think we can all assume that there will be some traffic impact. I think the benefit of a temporary pilot is to be able to sort of see things happen in real time and judge the trade-offs. And so I think we're also looking for advice from our design consultant about the best way to monitor that sort of thing. So I think this is something that after we get some input from the traffic commission in a more formal capacity, we'll have at least a little bit more of a roadmap of how we want to look at this.
Excellent, thank you. Actually, could we just hear from Ms. Conlon first, and then thank you.
Well, I agree that the comments that we received from neighbors, I think it's mainly residents right in the Franklin Street neighborhood, related to unloading of vehicles and the traffic. But I actually thought we were going to have the discussion tonight. So I think it is appropriate to have it now. And then if Tim wants to come back to us with a proposal, that's appropriate as well. But what I think was lost in some of the emails and in some of the social media posts that I saw is a lot of people didn't understand that this was a temporary pilot program and seemed to think that this was going to be a permanent change, and that it should be moved over to the deck, which, you know, that's not going to be finished until some time to come. So that's really not feasible. And the intent here is that this is COVID relief. And I think that was lost on a lot of people, possibly from reading the article. But Tim, I think that needs a little bit more explaining to residents that this is, as you said, a pilot program, and it's temporary, and it's intended to really help residents and businesses, which we know have been impacted during this pandemic. But the main point that I want to make is this is exactly what we want the planning director to be looking at, and seeking out grants and doing what other communities are doing, which is applying for state funds to help residents and to help business districts and to try to address some short-term needs. So Tim, I'm glad that you looked into this. I'm glad you did the initial planning work, and I don't have any problem with the fact that this was on the front page of the Milton Times, because I think we had some information about it. If not at a televised meeting, at least at least some kind of an email or something from you that this idea was coming. And to some extent, we touched on it a little bit at the last meeting. So thank you, Tim, for all of your efforts on this. And hopefully with further explanation, people have a better understanding of what exactly Tim was proposing here and what we want our planning staff to be looking at and doing. So thank you, Tim.
Right. There's that also the added point that we need to, in order to secure future grants, we need to make good use of current funding that's available. But I think, Mr. Doyle, did you have your hand raised?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that feedback that I have had is along the lines of what Katie just addressed, namely that these initiatives are laudable, that going after resources and new ideas is exactly the direction that people have been wanting and are looking forward to more of in the future. In this particular instance, what I've heard is people wanting to know about logistics that would be involved, neighborhood impact, neighborhood input, and adjustments in traffic flow within and throughout the neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Zulus?
Yeah, just to that end, I would, if this is going to be on the agenda for the Traffic Commission, I would let the East Milton Neighborhood Association know that it's going to be on the agenda, just so they're aware of that.
Thank you.
We can certainly make them aware of that. Thanks for that. That's a good tip.
Did we lose Richard?
Looks like we did.
Yeah. Okay. I hope everything's all right. Okay. Yes, Mr. Dennehy?
He had to jump off very quickly. There was issues he had to deal with. Yep.
Okay. All right. As long as he's okay. So if there's nothing else on this, okay, we'll move on. Yes, Mr. Doyle.
Just to amend my comment, one term that was reinforced was to demonstrate that this would be workable.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, so I think hearing all of this, I think it'd be appropriate, like, again, once we sort of get some more feedback from the Traffic Commission, once we get, I have a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce at their monthly meeting later on this week, kind of about their, ability to help out with some of the maintenance and operations I think we'll be able to have some more information that we can, publicize and potentially come back to this board with a kind of a more a fuller kind of application with some, I think, hopefully demonstrated support. So as I said before, stay tuned, and I'll work with Mr. Dennehy about agenda and scheduling if that's something that comes up.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everybody,
for joining us. Yes. See. Okay. So We are now to approval of a lease of patio heating equipment from the town of Milton to Milton's Opus LLC, doing business as Steel and Rye. We had gotten the lease agreement, and Town Council Kevin Freitag is here to walk us through. Some of us may remember this. Was a grant that I believe Chase Berkeley applied for, but oh, and I see Michael Kelly, our chief procurement officer, is also here. So welcome, Mr. Kelly. And Mr. Freitag and Mr. Kelly, if you would like to walk us through this.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Again, Kevin Freitag for Town Council. This is, like the last agenda item we just discussed, part of the Shared Winter Streets and Spaces Program grant that is in place now, and grants that are being provided by the state. Specifically here, this was a grant that was requested by Chase Berkeley to allow for the purchase by the town with grant funds of heat lamps to be used at Steel and Rye in their outdoor spaces. That grant was received by the Shared Streets program at MassDOT. It was approved. And then at that point, I got involved and was able to sort of communicate with the people at the Shared Streets program to understand exactly what the next steps were. And that it was clear at that point that we did need to have a lease in place for the town to lease the equipment to Steel and Rye. The town is actually also using the grant money to buy propane for the heat lamps, which is given to Steel and Rye. Again, this was all sort of cleared by the Shared Streets program as being an acceptable use of the grant funds. So having all that in mind, what the select board has before it tonight is a lease for the 11 heat lamps that the town now owns back to Steel and Rye. I would point out a couple of things in the lease just for the select board's consideration tonight. First, I don't know the exact copy that you have in front of you, but it probably has a 2020 date on it. Obviously, that's out of date. I've changed that in the version that I'm looking at now to 2021. The commencement date would be it could be as early as tomorrow, or even I suppose today, if the select board were to approve this lease. The lease term is also blank. I have a couple suggestions there. The board could, I think it would be appropriate to set a short lease term. I know that in some parts of the lease, it talks about a yearly sort of renewal term. It's not necessary to go that far out. We could just limit it to, for instance, 6 months. Or if the board was more comfortable with sort of a month-to-month situation and give the town administrator the right to end the lease with 30 days notice to Steel and Rye, I think that also might be appropriate. So those are two different options. And the last thing I'd point out is that I did put all of the select board members on the signature blocks. In recent weeks, I think we've gone in a different direction, which is to have the board vote to approve an agreement and then vote again to approve the town administrator to sign on behalf of the board. That would probably be appropriate here as well, just for practicality's sake. So those are the things I'd like to point out. I'm not sure if Mike Kelly, if you have anything you'd also like to add regarding the grant program or the procurement aspect of all this.
No, I think you summed it up pretty good, Kevin. Thank you.
Do members have any comments or questions for Mr. Freitag or Mr. Kelly? Mr. Doyle?
Yes, Kevin, what is the duration of the grant period, if you have that?
Let's see. I do not have that information. Mike, do you have that?
Well, I do. I actually emailed the state today to find out when it was ending, because there's a couple different dates on it, and I'm waiting for them to get back to me. So,
okay.
But I think it's at least until June 30th. Madam Chair, June 30th is my understanding.
Okay.
And I only take that from conversations I've had with Chase Berkeley. The Brook Road striping and signage that was put out there from the middle school up past St. Mary's
was to be revisited in the spring. And that in itself is a pilot program from this same program, the Shared Streets and Space grant application process. So I believe it to be June 30th as well.
Okay.
Would it then make sense, if I may, Madam Chair, for the lease term to parallel the grant period?
I think that's absolutely, I don't have a preference whether we do it month to month or we end it in 6 months. Does anyone else have a preference? Mr. Goulis?
I was just going to say, I mean, if we have the 6 month and then Kevin said with the 30-day termination provision, you know, if that's agreeable to Steel and Rye, I think that covers everything.
Mr. Kelly, any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, they were actually still, believe it or not, still outside. So they're planning on buying more propane and going until they can. So yeah, to June 30th sounds good, at least that far.
Well, so it sounds like June 30th with that 30-day notification to end. That should cover us on both ends there. Great. Yes, Mr. Freitag?
I just wanted to be clear that I will add that language in, because I was sort of looking at it as an either or approach, either sort of a month to month with a 30-day notice or a set date of 6 months. But if the board's, inclination here is to do through June 30th with that 30-day notice option in there, I'll just revise the lease accordingly after the board votes.
Okay. Mr. Dennehy?
Yeah, so I just looked it up on the mass.gov website. The deadline is May 31st, 2021.
Okay. So now we have our answer. May 31st with the 30-day provision, if that makes sense. And then the effective date could just be today. We would just, and that 30-day provision would be giving our town administrator the authority to do that. Okay, good. Just making sure I understood everything. So I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll move to approve a lease of patio heating equipment from the town of Milton to Milton's Opus LLC, DBA Steel and Rye, as provided.
Second.
And to authorize the town administrator. Can I offer a friendly amendment? Can we just tack that on to authorize town administrator Michael Dennehy to execute on behalf of the board?
Okay. I mean, right now they have the signed version. The Steel and Rye has already signed the version with our 5 signatures, but if they'll
okay.
I mean, I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. Why don't we do it either or? Why don't we authorize them to? I mean, just to make it happen.
Okay. Kevin's nodding yes, so we can do that. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. I have a second. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. And if we could note that Mr. Wells had left the meeting. Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Freitag and Mr. Kelly. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good night, folks.
Good night, Kevin.
And good night.
Night.
Okay, so next we have a reappointment of John Sullivan to the Municipal Broadband Committee. May I have a motion?
I'll move to reappoint John Sullivan to the Municipal Broadband Committee. John is energized and ready to go, and we met last week, and we're meeting again next week. So we're off and running.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. And I just want to thank you for getting us staffed up again, Mr. Zulus. Let's see, 9. So the next is it's entitled our No Place for Hate proclamation, and you all received a very rough draft of a proclamation. This is the proclamation that we historically read at the Martin Luther King Day celebration, which will be virtual this year. I actually took a look at the substance of that and did a little digging, and actually the MMA withdrew from that program in 2008. And I also read through the Anti-Defamation League website, and it's really seems to have transitioned more towards schools. And so I'm happy to still, I'll be the one reading it because it's my turn because I'm chair. I'm happy to read our traditional, or the one that we've been using for the past few years. However, I thought I would offer something that also incorporated some of our more recent actions and proclamations. And Arthur actually emailed with one change, two changes, sorry, because apparently I'm wishing that it were February. And I used the 18th day of February instead of January. I don't mean to be wishing everybody's life away. And then in the now, therefore, we section, 4 lines up from the bottom, he said that it would be vastly improved, which he didn't use those terms, but it was vastly improved when we took out the word stop. And it just, I think it really improves it, even though it's just one word. So I'm happy to have comments now, or people could perhaps send comments. Hillary's very good at working on these types of things too. So if people wanted to send their comments to Hillary, and she could, alter it and then send us a new draft. It's the 18th that we need it by, so we have another meeting in order to address it. I just wanted to get it out there because it is a change. It's not what we usually do, and I'm happy to read it out loud if people like. But it's up to people. What thoughts? Oh, Ms. Conlon.
I don't know that it needs to be read out loud, but I took a look at it and I thought it was a good effort.
Okay. All right. Mr. Zulus?
I agree with that.
Okay.
Chair, would you like a motion to approve as discussed?
Sure.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Okay. Well, thank you very much, all of you. I know it was very short notice, and I apologize for that. Let's see. So our future meeting dates, as we just discussed, are the 13th and the 27th of this month. And just looking at February, it should be the 10th and the 24th, I believe. So. I know the Finance Committee is meeting on Thursday, and I believe the full board is posted. So if they wanted to just listen in, we have the option to do that too. Future agenda items, other than the things that we've been discussing, are there additional agenda items that people would like to offer? Yes, Ms. Conlon.
When is the audit on? Is it on the 13th or is it February?
We couldn't quite hear you.
It's on the 13th. The audit committee is meeting on the 11th with me, and then we'll be presenting on the 13th.
Okay, thank you.
And the only other thing I would like to add is I'd like to introduce the town's Director of Finance, Town Accountant Karen Prevost, next Wednesday night.
Wonderful, thank you. So at this time, I would like to, I propose a motion to enter into executive session to conduct the following business. To approve meeting minutes pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 22F, and also pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Subsection A, Subsection 6, sometimes known as Reason 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, specifically 432 Adams Street, based on my belief that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the select board, and also pursuant to Chapter 30A, Section 21, Subsection A, Subsection 6, sometimes known as Reason 6, also to consider purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, specifically 525 Adams, based on my belief that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the select board, and not to return to open session, but to adjourn from executive session. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, you're muted.
I keep doing that to you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone who's attended this evening, and look forward to seeing you again. And thank you to MATV